Hi, and welcome to another edition of Moving Forward. Our world is facing an acute water shortage. According to writer Vandana Shiva, the water crisis is the most pervasive, most severe, and most invisible dimension of our ecological devastation on Earth. And locally, there's much confusion and difficulty uncovering the truth of how bad is this crisis, and what are the alternatives? Are they feasible within the time limits of our Earth's erratic global warming trends? So this program is going to offer some answers to your questions about the proposed Seawater Desalination Plant and provide some possible alternatives. And luckily today we have with us Rick Longinotti. He founded Desal Alternatives here in Santa Cruz and worked for 20 years as an electrical contractor. And we're very pleased to have you on our show, Rick. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Ann.
Good. The city of Santa Cruz, one of the first things that they say, the proponents of Desal say, that what we need Desal for is to protect the endangered species, the fish. And so can you explain to our viewers a little more about that?
Yeah, well, the major idea from 10 years ago for a desalination plant was to protect us from drought. You know, there's the memory of 1977, which was a very serious drought. It came on the heels of a serious drought the year before, so there was 2 in a row. And ever since that time, the city has been trying to find an alternative water supply to satisfy our needs so that we wouldn't have to cut way back during a drought. A very funny thing happened in the years after the year 2000 and that nobody expected, and that was that people's water use went way down. In fact, I have a chart to show you that. It went down by about 30%. So here's 1999, here's 2010, and there was a severe drop in water demand. This line up here is where they thought the water demand would be in 2010 when they created the Desal plan.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. But what I've also heard is that they need more water for, that we're thinking we can take the water out of...
About the fish, right?
Yeah, San Lorenzo.
Right. So back in 2003, when they created this estimation of where our water demand would be, they weren't really thinking about fish and having to leave water in the streams for a fish.
Yeah.
That has come up as recently. So even though water demand has gone down, our supply has gone down as well because we need to leave water in the streams for fish.
Yeah.
But the water supply has dropped less than the demand has dropped. So there's actually, we're better off.
The fish
now.
and the fish are better off.
The fish are better off, and we're better off in terms of our drought risk than we were 10 years ago. To just give you an idea, 10 years ago, in 2003, the water department estimated that if a worst case drought, another 1977 came along,
yeah,
we would be short water by about 45% in the summertime. Now, with the draft EIR that just came out on the Desal plant, the figure is 29%. We would be short 29% in a worst case drought. And the draft EIR estimates that that event would happen once in 100 years.
Okay, now let's see. You're saying we. So is we just the city of Santa Cruz? Because let me just go into the another question about the Soquel Water Creek District is being forced to reduce their overdraft of groundwater so that salt water doesn't move inland and doesn't pollute all their wells. And a lot of the proponents are saying that they need desal so that they can stock this huge aquifer. I mean, I spoke with Andy Schifrin about it, and he said it would take 20 to 30 years to even fill this vast aquifer that is so empty and is being sucked in with seawater. Can you explain some more about that?
Yeah. You know the old expression, a stitch in time saves 9?
Yeah.
Right?
What does that mean?
It means that if you take care of a problem at the beginning, you prevent it from getting worse and worse.
Okay.
And that's exactly what should have happened in 1980.
Oh, I see.
When the Soquel Creek Water District heard from the U.S. Geological Survey, they heard a report saying, you folks have very nearly maxed out your sustainable yield from that groundwater. In other words, a sustainable yield is what you can pump out of the ground every year and not have an overdraft, okay? They didn't pay attention to that report Instead, they got a second opinion. The second opinion told them, oh no, don't worry about it. You have 3 times the amount of water that you can draw sustainably from the aquifer as the United States Geological Survey told you. Three times the amount of water that you can pump out.
And this was something they learned in 1980.
They learned that in 1980. So they didn't listen to the U.S. Geological Survey. They went with this other consultant who they hired for the next 20 years as their consultant.
So when you say we're fine in city of Santa Cruz for our water. I mean, we're even in a worst case scenario.
In the worst case scenario for Santa Cruz, we're at 29% shortfall. That, if you ask most people, could you survive once in 100 years cutting back by 29%? Most people will say, well, I'd rather do that than build a desal plant. In SoCal, the problem is different because because of that mistake that was made in 1980, they are in a position where they can't even pump at their sustainable yield anymore. They have to go below their sustainable yield just to fill that aquifer back up. Their sustainable yield is 4,000 acre-feet per year. They have to only pump 2,900 acre-feet per year in order to catch up over a course of 20 years to catch up to where they would be had they listened 30 years ago. So that's the reason that SoCal Creek is wanting to build a desalination plant.
So and so what is our obligation as the city? Is that something that we need to work with them? I mean, we don't want them to be without water, or are we?
Absolutely. There is potential for regional collaboration.
Right.
That would refill that aquifer. And the basic idea of it is there's so much water running down the San Lorenzo River during the wintertime that SoCal Creek could be put on river water during 4 months out of the year, the wet months out of the year, and they would be resting their pumps. Their pumps would sit idle and not pump out of the ground and let that groundwater level recharge. So that's
now, how many years would that take?
Well,
I mean,
it depends how ambitious they are.
And how much is coming down the river?
Well, no, there's really a lot of water in the river.
Yeah.
What it really depends on is the willingness of the two communities to collaborate. SoCal certainly wants to collaborate. This is cheap, relatively cheap water that they could get through Santa Cruz's infrastructure. Santa Cruz has not been so willing to collaborate. And I think after we defeat the plans for the desalination plant, this is going to be the main issue that we'll be advocating for, is for Santa Cruz to lend a hand to SoCal, because we lend a hand to them in most winters. They'll lend a hand to Santa Cruz in the dry season of a drought.
Right, because as I understand it, they have huge aquifers in the SoCal Water District, which we don't have as much in the city, that our aquifers are not draftable or something.
Well,
is that correct?
Right. I mean, as we all know, we live in a rainforest. The redwood forest is basically a rainforest for the winter months of the year. So we have a storage issue. It's not a rainfall issue. We get plenty of rain, but we have a storage issue. The best place to store water is underground. And so if we are collaborating with SoCal District and also Scotts Valley District, because they're sitting on an aquifer that needs replenishment as well, that water, you can think of it as banking that water. For Santa Cruz, you could think of it as banking the water during a worst case drought or any kind of drought. The water could come back to Santa Cruz.
Okay. Now, one thing that everybody agrees upon is the cost, that a desal plant is hugely costly, just not only to the consumer, but the amount of energy that it takes to take seawater and make it into water again. And so wouldn't the use of our, then they say that it's okay because of the carbon offsets and that would satisfy all of our concerns. And so that's another thing that is like, what? How does this work? So.
Yeah, okay, well, can I show you another poster?
Yes, please.
All right, so here, the energy, just so people have an idea.
Yeah.
Our current water production takes energy, but desalination takes 12 times the energy for the city of Santa Cruz service area as to produce the same amount of water. the cost per million gallons for Santa Cruz right now, we don't quite know that cost, but there is in documentation from the city's integrated water plan that it costs $170 to process and treat water from Loch Lomond, to send it through the treatment plant. Desal, according to the draft EIR, is $10,750, so many, many times more expensive.
Good
than our
Lord. I
current
mean,
water
that's
supply.
extraordinary. It's $10,750 versus $170 for a million gallons
it's a
of
big
water.
difference.
Huge difference. And so what about these offsets? Maybe we could look at that little video about...
Well, let me just introduce the video.
Okay.
So if you talk to the desal proponents, they're saying, well, we need the water, you know, and as far as the environmental impact, we've got that figured out. Yeah, it takes a lot of energy, but we're going to offset those greenhouse gases that we're responsible for sending into the atmosphere. We're going to offset it by purchasing greenhouse gas offsets. That's the strategy that's been named in the draft EIR as a way to achieve so-called carbon neutrality, that this project would actually not end up in a net harm to the atmosphere. Now, what are those carbon offsets? They're things like paying large companies that own big tracts of forest land to slow down the rate at which they cut forests. So you pay a lot of money, and supposedly the trees get to keep the, you know, there are more carbon in the trees that get to be sequestered, and therefore it takes it out of the atmosphere. There are serious problems with those kinds of offsets, and scientists are really skeptical about most of those kinds of offsets, because you can imagine, well, what about the other large land holdings that aren't being paid to cut down? They're going to redouble the rates of their cutting just to meet the demand for lumber, right?
Right, because the energy is going to come from somewhere. The energy has to be generated on some level. I mean, for them to, and they're going to be creating a larger carbon footprint by doing
these offsets
desal.
are bogus.
Yeah.
They're not effective. They're not really real. They're not permanent. Those that are could be effective for a little while are not permanent. They're not verifiable. They're not quantifiable. And so that's basically a context for this video that we brought, because it's a little satire on the carbon offset idea.
Yeah, I think satire is important for us. So let's take a look at that.
I'm telling the birds, telling the bees, telling the flowers, telling the trees how I love you. I'm telling the moon, telling the sun, telling the stars, telling each one how I love you.
This couple...
No.
See that old couple there?
Yeah, if they come over.
Beth, get ready.
I don't know, they're not coming this way. Oh, I see. Oh no, they look too old.
How does my hair look?
How does my hair look? You zoom right in on us.
Yeah. Oh, they're not for sale, but you might be interested in our new company that we're launching today.
What we do is cheat offsetting. So if you're in a relationship, or you're lucky enough to be with someone, and for whatever reason something goes a little bit wrong, one of you does something that you probably shouldn't have done.
Happens quite often.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, what you can do is you can come to us and pay us a small amount of money. And what we do is we take that money and we invest it in couples like yourselves who are faithful to each other, and that way we can neutralise the damage that you've done to your relationship.
Do you think that you might want to sign up to our website or ever use our services?
Well, we can think about it.
Yeah. Have you ever cheated on your girlfriend?
No, certainly not.
Really? Why is that?
Because it would be wrong. I mean,
What about if I said you can pay £2.50 to our new company if you cheat on your girlfriend, and we'll pay someone else to be faithful for you? How about that?
no. I think I like my girlfriend too much.
That's very sweet. Have a balloon.
If a boyfriend and a girlfriend agreed that they would go by this rule, then we'd just be like, okay, I'll cheat, it'll only cost me $2.50.
Yeah.
And then everyone would cheat.
That's not balancing anything. It's just doing one thing and then doing something else totally different. I don't see the link between them except in our minds.
I think you'd benefit more from doing a campaign against cheating to stop them doing it in the first place, rather than...
So you think it'd be better if people didn't cheat at all, rather than cheated and then paid someone else not to cheat.
Stop them at the source.
Back on the Nighttime Friendly News Talk 1010 CFRB. Jim Bruley with you until 11. Ryan Doyle coming up at that time. CheatNeutral.com. What's that all about? Get a load of this, folks. We're joined right now by Christian Hunt. He's one of the people behind the website.
Alex Randall from CheatNeutral.com joins me now.
Hi.
CheatNeutral.com is a pretty innovative idea. Can you tell us about it?
Well, I'm really glad you think so.
So if I was on your little website, sweetheart, and I cheated, how much money would you want me to give?
About $5.
$5?
Hell yeah! Are you kidding?
Yeah.
And then that gives you, that makes you allowed to cheat?
What we're trying to do is say that cheating isn't something that you have to feel bad about. It's just something that you have to neutralize, make sure the total amount of cheating doesn't go up.
I think you're encouraging people to cheat.
You think I'm encouraging people to cheat?
Well, I mean, you're making it seem like it's okay. I mean, do you really think that by giving you money that it's going to absolve me of any guilt?
Okay, Jim. Well, I mean, let's look at where we got the inspiration from this idea. Okay, you may have heard of carbon offsetting.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that you can take a plane flight or whatever, and you're going to emit so many tons of carbon.
But you can pay into one of these, you know, so-called carbon offset companies, and they'll pay someone else in a developing country to plant trees or, you know, put in some low-energy light bulbs, and that absolves you of that guilt as well. So all we're doing is taking this well-established concept of carbon offsetting and moving it into the arena of cheating and relationships.
Great, you got the papers.
I've got the papers.
What did you get?
Financial Times, I'm not sure where we are, Society Guardian, and the Daily Mail. We're in all of them.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not going to be in...
Do they have an environment section?
No. This is just jobs.
Here we go.
Read it, read it, read it.
Let me introduce you to Alex, a shy young man you can sponsor to offset your own infidelity. Pay just £2.50 to support Alex's celibate existence, and you can continue your affairs with a clear conscience. Alex is on www.cheatneutral.com. A spoof, of course. The idea of offsetting your infidelity is crazy, but a similar madness actually exists. It's carbon offsetting, and it affects us all. In every sector of the economy, it is possible to make changes that will secure a future for our children. We just need to cherish the planet, not cheat on it.
There is really no place for carbon offsetting in an agenda that seeks to deliver carbon reductions for ourselves. Anyone who needs to understand this, just consult a website called cheatneutral.com.
I love the video, yeah. The video makes the point that a lot of these carbon offsets are just totally bogus, and it's trying to do on the cheap what would be actually a lot more extensive to do. Like if you really wanted to offset carbon, you might put in a solar panel facility, you know, to run, in this case a desal plant, to run the desal plant on solar power would add a price tag maybe 50-60% more than it would cost just to build the plant.
Oh, wow.
If you wanted to run it on solar powers. And even then, there's a question for that. Like if you, say at your house, you wanted to buy a hot tub, but you felt bad about the energy use, and so you wanted to offset it and put solar panels on your house. The issue is, yeah, you could offset that amount of energy from your hot tub, but maybe we all need to reduce our energy first before we add new demand. And that's exactly what our communities need to do in the state of California. We've got a goal to reduce our carbon footprint by 80%, an incredibly ambitious number, but one that the scientists say is absolutely necessary.
And probably more doable than we think. So let's talk about some alternatives. What's going to be successful in Santa Cruz for these water challenges that we're facing? What are some alternatives that are really going to work?
Yeah. Well, I want to mention again the use of the water in the river, and I want to just give an idea of the volume of water in the river. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the river in the stormy months of the year, but I have a little graph that shows what's going on in the river over 74 years. This is a graph about the median flow in the river, and it goes, this line is like 100 cubic feet per second, so it's up above that. That's really rushing 100 cubic feet per second for about 4 months out of the winter. This red line down here, 5.4 cubic feet per second is what Santa Cruz draws on an average daily basis in the wintertime. So there's an enormous quantity of water that
Just going in the ocean.
It's just untouched.
So it's not even being utilized.
It's not being
really.
utilized.
Wow.
We really, in order to make use of that, we need to be able to treat water that's muddy, but that's just an off-the-shelf kind of item to be able to treat turbid water. And that's the kind of investment that we need to make, especially if we're sharing water with neighboring districts, Scotts Valley and Soquel Creek.
Right, okay.
So that's one of the main ideas. Do you want to hear any more?
Well, of course, yeah. What other ideas?
Well, we've got to do something about growth and water demand, because I mentioned to you that we've got a very doable kind of challenge right now, which is a 1 in 100 year event where we'd have to cut back by 29%. But if we don't deal with growth in our water demand,
right, the university, this
if we can't offset that growth, now these are offsets that are real, that if we can really offset that growth by conservation measures, such as people purchasing washing machines with the help of rebates, washing machines that are efficient, or replacing lawns with drought-tolerant landscaping, those are the kind of measures that we need to be funding in order to offset growth, and that way our drought risk doesn't get any worse. And so we call that water neutral development. The neighbor district, Soquel Creek, has water neutral development. They've been doing it since 2003. Santa Cruz has not done it. And for that reason, Santa Cruz is estimating that their water demand is going to go up 9% by 2030, which it does a drastic, it's at that level, it does a bad thing to our drought risk.
Okay. Well, some of the proponents of desal, they're saying that the exchange of water with neighboring districts will require rights that are going to be prohibitive, and the legal challenges, that's going to be way too much, and that we're starting from scratch. How can we think of water transfers? So could you talk a little quickly? We only have 5 minutes left of the show, so. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, water rights, as I talked to somebody from the National Marine Fisheries Service, and they're the agency that has come down on the city to try to get them to leave more water in the streams. He said to me, water rights are just pieces of paper. People shouldn't be so afraid of changing the water rights. The fisheries agencies are basically the only agencies that can gum up the works if you're applying for a water rights change. If you have the fisheries agencies on your side, then you can facilitate these water rights changes. And that's what we're talking about. A kind of a collaboration that's better for the fish, better for the aquifers, and better for Santa Cruz in the drought year. That is doable if we're willing to collaborate. If we're not willing to collaborate, we've got real problems.
Right, and they also, we're looking at also the idea of recycling plants and recycling water, using gray water for things. In Orange County, they have the largest water recycling plant in the whole world, and this could be something that we could also use to help fill up aquifers.
Absolutely, and we have customers who are clamoring for recycled water, and I'm talking about Pasatiempo Golf Course, who has been dying to get recycle water from Scotts Valley, and this is kind of a water swap that would happen with the city of Santa Cruz, where Santa Cruz would supply Scotts Valley with water in the winter and then recycle water come to the golf course during those dry months of the year. It makes total sense, and it's time for people to grease the skid so that can actually happen. But Ann, what's happening with this desal project is that a lot of these good ideas are not getting the attention that they need.
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
So what can we do? We need to move forward on this. And how can people get involved? We've got the Desal organization that you have a website for.
Yeah, it's called Desal Alternatives.
Do you encourage people to get involved with the responding to the EIR that's on there for the comment period? That's going to be up in mid-August.
Yeah, the comment period ends August 12th, and people is definitely invited to comment on that, and they can find the address.
What should they say? Website. I mean, what should we say? Just talk about some of these alternatives and say, don't use my tax money to fund desal?
Well, if people read some of the EIR, it might help to inform their comments. But the point of it is that that expression, when the people lead, the leaders will follow. That's what's going to happen here.
So we need community involvement.
We need people who think that this is a really absurd idea to build a desalination plant to get active and to let their leaders know about it. And I predict that we are not going to see any kind of desal plant in this community. So we have to get busy on alternatives.
We do. We have to get busy on them, and so then there's things that we can do to get involved. What would be, do you encourage people to have meetings in their homes?
Absolutely. If people contact us at desalalternatives.org, we're encouraging people to have a little neighborhood meeting at their homes.
Neighborhood meetings, yeah.
And, to help us, get literature out, to raise money, to do mailings.
Because all of these sound really feasible. I know that in Monterey as well, they have recycling plant for a big water recycling plant. It seems like there could be, and I know that there's money that we need just to bolster our existing water.
If people have the idea, why don't we capture some of the water we've got that's fresh water?
Yeah.
Rather than let it go to sea and become salty and then try to take the salt out of it.
It doesn't,
you have a 6-year-old who could comprehend that, right? So it really makes total sense. We've got the county pushing for this collaboration between districts. We have Santa Cruz that's reluctant. In fact, I would say digging its heels in about that proposal.
So
we need the politicians and the leaders to move that forward.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here today, and I hope this clears up some people's questions, and please get in touch and get involved. Thanks so much.
This rain is our rain, this sea is our sea, the San Lorenzo and the Bradford 14, and from Loch Lomond down to the ocean, we'll keep the water flowing clear and free.
This is my home, this bay called Monterey, and all that I ask is to let it stay this way. All we can own is what we leave behind, and if we care to save this place, now's the time.
This rain is our